Okay. Anyway, I had a feeling it was going to be.
I had a feeling it was going to be there.
So we'll let him do a reading, and then I will take any questions. Just do the first section.
First chapter?
Yes, yeah, right.
Okay.
And then I will talk after that.
All right. I have to stand up because I need to be able to read.
Oh. The diaphragm has to be in the proper position.
Well, I when I do my own podcast, I do stand up to read because the microphone picks up sound from the whole body, and I'm just such a habit of standing to read. I can't read sitting down anymore, which is awkward. You're right. Chapter 1. Stolen letters. Hadrian could see little in the darkness, but he could hear them. The snapping of twigs, the crush of leaves, and the brush of grass. There were more than one, more than three, and they were closing in. Don't neither of you move, a harsh voice ordered from the shadow. We got arrows aimed at your backs, and we'll drop you in your saddles if you try to run. The speaker was still in the dark eaves of the forest, just a vague movement among the naked branches. We're just going to lighten your load a bit. No one needs to get hurt. Do as I say, and you'll keep your lives. Don't, and we'll take those too. Hadrian felt his stomach sink, knowing this was his fault. He glanced over at Royce, who sat beside him in his dirty gray mare with his hood up, his face hidden. His friend's head was bowed and shook slightly. Hadrian did not need to see his expression to know what he looked like. Sorry, he offered. Royce said nothing, just continued to shake his head. Before them stood a wall of fresh-cut brush blocking their way. Behind them lay the long, moonlit corridor of empty road. Mist pooled in the dips and gullies. Somewhere an unseen stream trickled over rocks. They were deep in the forest on the old southern road, engulfed in a long tunnel of oaks and ash whose slender branches reached out over the road, quivering and clacking in the cold autumn wind. Almost a day's ride from any town, Hadrian could not recall passing so much as a farmhouse in hours. They were on their own, in the middle of nowhere, the kind of place people never found bodies. The crush of leaves grew louder until at last the thieves stepped into the narrow band of moonlight. Hadrian counted 4 men with unshaven faces and drawn swords. They wore rough clothes, leather and wool, stained, worn, and filthy. With them was a girl wielding a bow, an arrow notched and aimed. She was dressed like the rest, in pants and boots, her hair a tangled mess. Each was covered in mud, a ground-in grime, as if the whole lot slept in a dirt burrow. They don't look like they got much money, a man with a flat nose said, an inch or two taller than Hadrian. He was the largest of the party, a stocky brute with a thick neck and large hands. His lower lip looked to have been split about the same time his nose was broken. But they got bags again, the girl said. Her voice surprised him. She was young, and despite the dirt, cute, almost childlike. But her tone was aggressive, even vicious. Look at all the stuff they're carrying. Which was all the rope? Hadrian was uncertain if she was asking him or her fellows. Either way, he was not about to answer. He considered making a joke, but she did not look like the type he could charm with a compliment and a smile. On top of that, she was pointing the arrow at him, and it looked like her arm might be growing tired. I claim that big sword the fella has on his back, Flatnose says. Looks right about my size. I'll take the other 2 he's carrying. This came from the one with the scar that divided his face at a slight angle, crossing the bridge of his nose just high enough to save his eye. The girl aimed the point of her arrow at Royce. I want the little one's cloak. I look good in a fine black hood like that. The deep-set eyes and sun-baked skin. With deep-set eyes and sun-baked skin, the man closest to Hadrian appeared to be the oldest. He took a step closer and grabbed hold of Hadrian's horse by the bit. Be real careful now. We killed plenty of folks along this road. Stupid folks who didn't listen. You don't want to be stupid, do you? Hadrian shook his head. Good. Now drop them weapons, the thief said, and then climb down. What do you say, Royce? Hadrian asked. We give him a bit of coin, nobody gets hurt. Royce looked over. 2 eyes peered out from the hood with a withering glare. I'm just saying, we don't want any trouble, am I right? You don't want my opinion, Royce said. So you're going to be stubborn? Silence. Hadrian shook his head and sighed. Why do you have to make everything so difficult? They're probably not bad people, just poor. You know, taking what they need to buy a loaf of bread to feed their family. Can you begrudge them that? Winter's coming. Times are hard. He nodded his head in the direction of the thieves. Right? I ain't got no family, Flatnose replied. I spent most of my coin on drink. You're not helping, Adrian said. I'm not trying to. Either you two do as you're told, or we'll gut you right here. He emphasized this by pulling a long dagger from his belt and scraping it loudly against the blade of his sword. The cold wind howled through the leaves, bobbing the branches and stripping away more foliage. Red and gold leaves flew, swirling in circles, buffeted by the gusts along the narrow road. Somewhere in the dark, an owl hooted. Look, how about we give you half our money? My half. That way, this won't be a total loss for you. We ain't asking for half, the man holding his mouth said. We want it all. Right now. No, we want it all. Right down to these here horses. Now, wait a second. Our horses? Taking a little coin is fine, but horse thieving? If you get caught, you'll hang. And you know we'll report this at the first town we come to. You're from up north, aren't you? Yeah, we left Medford yesterday. The man holding his horse nodded, and Hadrian noticed a small red tattoo on his neck. See, that's your problem. His face softened to a sympathetic expression that appeared more threatening by its intimacy. You're probably on your way to Colnora. Nice city, lots of shops, lots of fancy rich folk, lots of trading going on down there, and we get lots of people along this road carrying all kinds of stuff to sell to them fancy folk. But I'm guessing you ain't been south before, have you? Up in Melangar, King Amrath, he goes to trouble with saving soldiers, of having soldiers patrol the roads. But here in Warwick, things are done a bit differently. Flatnose came closer, licking his split lip as he studied the spadone sword on his back. Are you saying theft is legal? No, but King Ethelred lives in Equester, and that's awful far from here. And the Earl of Chadwick, is he an admirer of those lands? Wait a minute. Doesn't he administer these lands on the king's behalf? Why, Archie Ballantyne. The mention of his name brought chuckles from the other thieves. Archie don't give a rat's ass what goes on in the common folk. He's too busy picking out what to wear. The man grinned and showed his yellow teeth that grew at odd angles. So now drop them swords and climb down. Afterward, you can walk up to Ballantyne Castle, knock on old Archie's door, and see what he does. Another round of laughter. Now, unless you think this is the perfect place to die, you're going to do as I say. You were right, Royce, Hadrian said in resignation. He unclasped his cloak and laid it across the rear of his saddle. We should have left the road. But honestly, we are in the middle of nowhere. What were the odds? Just judging from the fact that we're being robbed, pretty good, I think. Kind of ironic. Raiera being robbed. Almost funny, even. It's not funny. Did you say Raiera? The man holding Hadrian's horse asked. Hadrian nodded and pulled his gloves off, tucking them into his belt. The man let go of his horse and took a step away. What's going on, Will? The girl asked. What's Raiera? There's a pair of fellas in Melangar that calls themselves that. He looked toward the others and lowered his voice a bit. I got connections up that way, remember? They say two guys call themselves Raiera, work out of Medford, and I was told to keep my distance if I was ever to run across them. So what are you thinking, Will? Scarface asked. I'm thinking maybe we should clear the brush and let them right through. What? Why? There's 5 of us, it's just 2 of them, Flatnose pointed out. But they're Raiera. So what? So my associates up north, they ain't stupid. And they told everybody never to touch these 2. And my associates ain't exactly the squeamish types. If they say to avoid them, there's a good reason. Flatnose looked at them again with a critical eye. Okay. How do you know these 2 guys are them? You just going to take their word for it? Will nodded toward Hadrian. Look at the swords he's carrying. A man wearing 1. Maybe he knows how to use it, maybe not. A man carries 2. He probably doesn't know nothing about swords, but he wants you to think he does. But a man carrying 3 swords? That's a lot of weight. No one's going to haul that much steel around unless he makes a living using them. Hadrian drew 2 swords from the sides in a single elegant motion. He flipped one around, letting it spin against his palm once. Need to get a new grip on this one. It's starting to fray again. He looked at Will. Shall we get on with this? I believe you were about to rob us. The thieves shot uncertain glances to each other. Will, the girl asked. She was still holding the bow taut, but looked decidedly less confident. Let's clear the brush out of the way and let them pass, Will said. You sure? Hadrian asked. This nice man with the busted nose seems to have his heart set on getting a sword. That's okay, Flatnose said, looking up at Hadrian's blades as the moonlight glinted off the mirrored steel. Well, if you're sure. All five nodded, and Hadrian sheathed his weapons. Will planted his sword in the dirt and waved the others over as he hurried to clear the barricade of branches blocking the roadway. You know you're doing this all wrong, Royce told him. The thieves stopped and looked up, concerned. Royce shook his head. Not clearing the brush, the robbery. You picked a nice spot, I'll give you that, but you should have come at us from both sides. And William? It is William, isn't it? Hadrian asked. The man winced and nodded. Yeah, William. Most people are right-handed, so those coming in close... Oh, excuse me. The man winced and nodded. Yeah, William. Most people are right-handed, so those coming in close should approach from the left. That would have put us at a disadvantage, having to swing across our bodies at you. Those with bows should be on our right. And why just one bow? Royce asked. She could have only hit one of us. They've even done that, Hadrian said. Did you notice how long she held that bow bent? Either she's incredibly strong, which I doubt, or that's a homemade greenwood bow with barely enough power to toss the arrow a few feet. Her part was just for show. I doubt she's ever launched an arrow. Have two, the girl said. I'm a fine marksman. Hadrian shook his head at her with a smile. You had your finger on top of the shaft, dear. If you had released, the feathers on the arrow would have brushed your finger, and the shot would have gone anywhere but what you wanted it to. Royce nodded. Invest in crossbows. Next time you stay hidden, just put a couple of bolts into each of your target's chests. All this talking is just stupid. Royce! Hadrian admonished. What? You're always saying I should be nice to people. I'm trying to be helpful. Don't listen to him. If you wanted some advice, try building a better barricade. Yeah, drop a tree across the road next time, Royce said, waving a hand toward the branches. He added, this is just pathetic. And cover your faces, for Maribor's sake. Warwick isn't that big of a kingdom, and people might remember you. Sure, Ballantyne isn't likely to bother tracking you down for a few petty highway robberies, but you're going to walk into a tavern one day and get a knife in your back. Royce turned to William. You were in the Crimson Hand, right? Will looked startled. No one said nothing about that. He stopped, pulling on the branch he was working on. Well, didn't need to. A hand requires all guild members to get that stupid tattoo on their necks. Royce turned to Hadrian. It's supposed to make them look tough, but all it really does is make it easy to identify them as thieves for the rest of their lives. Painting a red hand on everyone is pretty stupid when you think about it. That tattoo is supposed to be a hand? Hadrian asked. I thought it was a little red chicken. Now that you mention it, hand makes more sense. Royce looked back at Will and tilted his head to one side. It does sort of look like a chicken. Will clamped a palm over his neck. After the last of the brush was cleared, William asked, who are you really? What exactly is Rhaenyra? The hand never told me. They just said to keep it clear. Oh, we're nobody special, Hadrian replied. Just a couple of travelers enjoying a ride in a cool autumn's night. But seriously, Royce said, you need to listen to us if you're going to keep doing this. After all, we're going to take your advice. What advice? Royce gave a gentle kick to his horse and started forward on the road again. We're going to go visit the Earl of Chadwick, but don't worry, we won't mention you.